Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of Wild Screamers and check out a band called Made Out of Babies? I don't know. The song is called Gunt. And, typically I'd bring up a little picture there of like the YouTube video and whatnot, but I don't want to look at the album art, which that's what this is. It's a topic channel, so just get the album art. You guys are more than welcome to go look it up if you want, but I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not going to look at it, and if I don't look at it, I can't put it up on OBS either. So you're just going to have to stare at me while the song's going. All right? So let's get to it. And this is Made Out of Babies, Gunt. Really taking their time building up this tension. Huge bass presence, a really dry drum kit. It's just a very big sound. That was somehow that not only met my expectations of what they were going to do based on the name of the band, but exceeded it. That was exhausting to listen to. In the best way. I hope that makes sense. It's just a lot of intensity and aggression almost constantly. And when we don't have those, we have an obscene amount of tension that lies underneath the surface, waiting to explode into the next major moment. So, yeah, at least for me, it's just, man, very uh, energy draining to listen to that. Um, music. We're gonna touch on music first because I don't think I have the vocabulary to speak about the lyrics yet. I don't. I mean, not the lyrics, the vocals. I don't even know what really happened there. Just a lot to take in. Musically, this borders on maybe post rock, something like that. A lot of these sections are based on almost wall of sounds. The production is a bit cleaner and more precise so that you can hear the individual instruments, but I think the goal is really to just be this really big sonic entity that presses on into your ears. Um, Many of the instruments, including the vocals and the drums, have additional production put on them to alter the way that they sound as far as width goes. Sorry. Um, Maybe not the vocals. The vocals aren't really done for the width. They're done for something else. We'll talk about that in a moment. The guitars, the bass, they all have a ton of compression put on them. They're all clipping, have overdrive, all the crackling elements. They're huge, tons of volume. These are very big sounds, no matter where they're placed. I don't think there's a lot of changing. Guitar left, bass right, and then occasionally we'll have a melody driven centered guitar that takes the place of the vocals in a couple sections. But yeah, they're designed expressly to be large, to make the song feel enormous, and paired with the slowness of the music, and the pitch that they choose for a lot of it. It's all lower end of these instruments. It makes this looming colossus of a sound that puts all this weight and pressure on the listener. It is just an extremely oppressive, weighty style of music that goes for this singular entity. Like this is all that you really feel is just this pressure, right? And it's paired with an interesting drum. I had called it dry in the middle, but it really isn't. It sounds lacking. It's not very dynamic, I think would be the word I use. Not necessarily dry, just flat. But it's very, the opposite of dry would be wet. There's a lot of stuff going on with it, especially when you listen to the snare. It feels muffled and compressed, kind of bringing down its dynamic element, flattening the curve a bit, bringing it in line with that flat dynamic in the guitar and the bass. They pretty much have the same volume at all times. There's not much of a dynamic range to the way that they sound. But in difference of verticality, thinking of sound waves, right? They go up and down. That's your dynamic element. They are stretched out into this ridiculously wide reverb. When the snare hits, you hear the crack, and then you still feel the snare through the entire beat. Sometimes even the two beats until the snare comes back in, you can still hear the reverberance, the leftover effect. It is like when a giant beast, a colossi, if you will, stomps the ground. And despite the step being taken, the ground continues to shake past the point of contact. It is just very wide of a drum sound. It goes for most of it. Almost the entire kit is done like this, where it's sort of compressed and muffled a little bit. It's lacking in that crisp dynamic element, but it is just stretched out. It's widened so much to imply this weight that works well with what the guitar and the bass are doing sonically as well. And like I said, all of this is just paired with slower playing. It really gives the feel of this looming giant taking these massive but slow steps. It is just a crushing weight being pushed down. And, we're not in this moment all the time. We have our intro, which is a slow lead up. There is that moment in the middle, maybe a bridge, when the vocalist went towards that higher pitched, like kitty voice. Um, in which case, we typically cut out the guitars. We very much simplify the drums if there's any drumming at all, and the bass takes over as sort of the lead instrument here, just to provide that tension, right? That just starts to build. You know it's going to go somewhere. You know that somewhere is going to be big. We just haven't gotten there yet, and you're just on the edge of your seat waiting for it to happen. And I think it's interesting too that in a lot of these sections, they're not driven by the guitar. The guitar is a textual thing, usually playing a single chord and just really filling the space with its sound, its width, its fuzziness, its compression, the crackle of it, the overdrive, filling it with the tone more so than the notes itself. The bass actually has moving melody lines. They're not drastically interesting. We can hear when we cut down in the bridge to just the bass and the vocals. It's like a pedal tone for a little bit and then a little bit of a lick, and then we return back to that pedal tone. It's not, like I said, it's not a melody that's going to carry a song, but between the three instruments outside of the vocals, the bass has the most movement. They are kind of given the spotlight as well, not being centered with the drums, but being pushed to the side like a lead guitar or well, actually any guitar in a lot of modern productions where we'd put the chordal stuff and the melody stuff in the two ears and then leave the rhythm section, usually the bass and the drums, centered. This puts the bass in one of the lead sections where you're going to hear it. It's very clearly stated. The drums and the vocals are center. The guitar gets its own space, the bass gets its own space, and the bass is also given prominence in the composition. It's really neat how that comes together. And like I said, it's a song that's bass driven, right? I think the majority of this, most people are going to tune into the vocals. They're prominent in the spotlight, they're prominent in the mix. They're easily the most dynamic and ear drawing aspect of the song. But when the vocals cut out, it's the bass that keeps the song moving forward, and that's just not something we hear too often. And I have to give the praise for that because I think that's awesome. Um, so yeah, next is going to be the vocals, because that's really the only other thing I have to talk about. I mean, we can talk about structure, but it's pretty standard. We got like an A B A B C B thing going on. We have a verse chorus and then that bridge where we bring it down that leads into our final section. Might have been our final chorus, might have been our final verse chorus pairing, but it's a pretty standard idea here. Our intro took a bit of time to get into the song, but once we got into that, like I said, pretty standard structure there. The tone of the song, the feeling of the song, it's oppressive, it's aggressive, it's heavy and lingering and weighty. I talked about in in the musical bit. I mean, that's really all there is to the song. It's not super deep or complex. It does what it does very well, but what it does is also pretty simple. It's just very effective at it, and sometimes that's the best way to go about doing it. Especially when you want to go for heavy, right? Simplicity, I think, is key for that. Uh, Usually, like I've mentioned in the past, you get somebody who's shredding on a guitar or super complex stuff like polyphia, and I tend to talk about it as agile or acrobatic or, the fingers dancing on the guitar. There's an agility to it. It completely removes or it's the complete opposite of the idea of something that is so massive it moves slowly, and it's more of a lunging than a dancing, right? So yeah, when you want something weighty like this is 100% the way to go. Simplistic is key. But the entire song, of course, is not simplistic. We have to talk about the vocals. Rhythmically, there's some interesting aspects, but for the most part, the vocals are not rhythmically interesting. And melodically, even, there's many parts in here that I would not say are strong melodically. They are certainly in the spotlight. They're given the key melodic instrument role, but a lot of the times we're just sitting on a single pitch, maybe perceived pitch. We'll talk about that in a second, and just hammering it home, hammering that one note. There really isn't a lot of moments where I'd say there is a moving melody with changing pitches. Even in the moments when we're not doing the harsh vocals, we still very rarely. Well, the one time we really get into it is in the bridge, and that's more of a sing-songy spoken word kind of thing. Not really aiming for pitches there. It's more about telling a story. And the intro to verse 2 kind of starts with that, and we do have an element of pitch with this rising cyclical pattern, but of course it rises into a harsh, so we're really not in that moment very long either. So yeah, even though it is what I would say is the melodic role, it's the lead instrument, it's what most people are going to be drawn to, it's what most people are going to remember. Especially after first time listen, it's not the melody. The bass actually has the melody in this track. In pretty much every case. What the vocals do, though, is dynamic quality. I had mentioned that the instruments are kind of flat. They stay at a single level. We do bring the bass down a little bit in the bridge, but other than that, they're just at a single level. They don't have fluctuations to their attacks. A lot of the notes aren't given a chance to die down naturally. It's just constant level. Same with the drums. A lot of their dynamic bounce is removed and they're kind of flattened out across the board. The vocals bring about dynamic work. There are a few different styles of vocal techniques and deliveries utilized here. And even within the harsh, we have a couple of perceived pitches that she can kind of hit the note and kind of stay there for a little bit, and sometimes push up of what sounds to be a few notes and punctuate a sentence or a line with a higher note or a lower note. There's a little bit of playfulness in that harsh range that she has. And then, of course, she has the kitty voice that she used in the bridge, sounding like a child. And there's also her spoken word that we hear a little bit at times, too. There's her clean that she brings out very sparsely. This is where the dynamic element of the song comes from. This is why it doesn't feel stale from start to finish. And it's a lot of how she's delivering all of this. Now, man, that harsh. We got to talk about this for a second. As usual, I feel like I've said this a lot this week. If there's been anyone who has dissected this vocal technique, I don't care if it's a reaction or a scripted channel or even an interview with the vocalist herself, I want to know. Please point me in that direction. Because much like the first time I checked out Devin Townsend, I don't think this is sustainable. I'm going to wager, I mean, maybe it isn't. This is 2006. I don't know if the band's still around. I don't know if the vocalist is still around. Maybe it wasn't a sustainable vocal style. We've explored some of those with the, man, what is that genre? Depressive black metal, depressive suicidal black metal. Is that what it is? DSBM. I know it's a 4-letter acronym. It's a black metal style, and they specifically use dangerous vocal techniques to portray the emotion of the songs and stuff like that. So it's possible that that's what was happening here, but there is what sounds to me a lot of physical not false chords, but your true chords, I think is what they're called, your vocal cords, being utilized in here with some heavy compression. Now, there is a little bit of audio distortion being applied to it. You can hear in several sections, especially in the clean singing, where it begins to clip a little bit, and that's going to provide some extra crackle and compression on top of it. And assuming that the producer allowed her screams to clip as well, you're going to get a little bit of extra grit out of that, but I don't think it's going to be enough to be the grit alone with the clean singing. I really think she's putting some compression on the cleans in a way that to me this doesn't sound healthy. Again, I'm not a vocal coach, so maybe I'm completely out of my depth here, but it literally to me just sounds like she's yelling as loud as she can, and as far as I know, that's not safe. Now again, I don't know who this singer is. I don't know who this band is. I haven't heard of them until now. That doesn't mean that they're not still around. Of course, I have a very large gap in my music knowledge, especially in the realm of metal. But I'm kind of getting the feeling that the band's not around anymore. So like I said, it could be possible. It could be a possibility where the vocalist damaged their vocal cords singing like this. But what it does do is provide a very raw sound that works well with the very raw, full, gigantic sound that just gives the song an element of larger than life. The music is beyond me, so much so that I feel crushed under it, and the vocals are so passionate and raw that it feels like the vocalist is actively destroying their vocal cords. Again, I don't know if they are, it just sounds like it. They're actively destroying their vocal cords in order to get their message across to me. That's what it feels like. This feels like a very desperate song. And a lot of that comes from the vocal work. It's just, it is gnarly. I certainly believe that this vocalist deserves to be during Wild Screamers Week, especially with the frequency that this vocal style is kept up. It is the fry scream, the harsh scream that's utilized throughout this entire track. And it also has some pitchiness to it. I had mentioned that she kind of can move up or down into some notes, and it almost sounds at one point like her voice cracked while she was adding compression to it, and it was, oh man, it was like a cracked, a distorted squeak. It was the weirdest thing I've ever heard. For some reason, it fit perfectly. It almost sounded like it was intentional. Maybe it was. Um, Again, it kind of leans me into the area that I think that this might not have been the safest vocal technique, but yeah, it just little moments like that really push the performance over the edge to me and add that extra layer of passion and desperation to the performance itself. It's just like I said, it's just on another level. It blows me away. It demands my attention for sure. Not just out of the sonic aspect of it, which is very shrill in some places and ear piercing, but also, like I said, just the performative aspect requires that I listen to it. It's mixed in a place that my ear is going to naturally gravitate towards, and it's done so in a way that's unique. I can't say I've heard much like this. So yeah, and then like, man, that baby voice in the bridge is just so weird. But what this band does do very well, both from the music and from the vocals, I'm just want to say this real quick before we get into the lyrics, is build-ups. There's two of them in here, maybe three of them. They all work so well. The tension is palpable, and it's just very powerful moments growing into the big moment. The big moments hit hard, great use of contrast, etc., etc. But to me, there's something about the way that they build them up and the tension that they utilize in them. Sometimes it's just one instrument. I can't even say that they're using dissonance between instruments or layering textures that are creating uncomfortability or something like that. It's just, I don't know. There's just this, I think some of it comes from the vocals, especially just the way that she brings them down to a point that they're quiet, but she still commands so much power out of them. For instance, during the baby voice section, um, there was a moment when she kind of screeched, but very quietly screeched. And I don't know how you do that. Screeching to me is a volume thing. It comes from the diaphragm. You push the air out, you get more volume. It goes into the higher range. And she did it while like whispering. Just like I said, there's a control there, not just over her vocals, but over my attention. It's just kind of bonkers. I do want to say real quick though that I'm very intrigued by this because up until this point, one of my favorite vocalists has been the vocalist of a band called Jack Off Jill, and there's been a couple of times there during this channel that I've made allusions back to that band, and I don't think it's ever been a musical one. Like this band's guitar work reminds me of Jack Off Jill's guitar work or anything like that. It's always the vocals. That vocalist has always been a unique spot in my mind as far as music goes and vocals. And not only is this kind of similar to it, where I can say, oh, I have another vocalist to kind of put. No, no, this isn't the same vocalist. I have another vocalist that I can kind of put in this folder, right? I can classify and say, oh, I have another place to point to here. I think that they took that style and ran with it and just cranked it to like 15. It is bonkers because I hear similarities to the Jack Off Jill's vocalist here, but nothing as extreme as this. And it's really blowing my mind. But at the same time, like I said, I'm glad I can finally put another vocalist in this file, in this folder, in my mind. So, and it makes me want to explore the band more, even if this song made me deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Alright, last up we're going to get into some lyrics and we'll see what's going on with that. And then we'll wrap the video up. Alright, let's oh man, you got a nail in your brain. Turn it left until the fleas can come out. Thimble, thumbnail, showered cuts, and rip the power out and bring it all on over. Throw it at your neighbor, tread that shallow water. The whole town is coming over. Scram, sad, I'm so sad, little brother. The whole bin is in. It's over, left your home at 3014, make the best of petty theft schemes. Scram, it's the biggest, darkest black beast made of glass and full of thunder. I can be the thing you want, a big indifference reminder. Pick it up and run for cover. This whole place is going under. Scram, you've got to fake it. Make the best of petty theft schemes. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap the video up here. I got nothing. And like trying to mix that up with uh the vocal styles, like most of that is shouted, screamed, yelled, however you want to call it, but there's something in the middle that has that baby voice to it, and like I'm trying to figure out how these stream of consciousness ideas that don't seem to form a larger picture but are also seemingly also very, there's a darkness to it. I don't know why. Um and just trying to reconcile everything I heard with this stream of ideas, and I got nothing, man. It's a weird song. Weird in a good way. I don't like to use weird often because I feel like it's got negative. It's a strange, it's unusual. We can go with that. It's not a usual song. I think that's accurate without being negative. And that unusualness is part of the lyrics, it's part of the vocal work. I'd even say it's part of the music. I mentioned why most of the selections of how the instruments fit together and why they're selected the way help create the specific vibe they're going for, but it also has just a lot of odd or not usual ideas behind it. Putting a bass panned right rather than hiding it in the mix or putting it center with the drums. is great. I love it, but it's also not usual. Flattening out the drums and removing the dynamic element of that, even in post metal or post rock, is not usual. The drums are still usually a dynamic voice against the flat wall of sound around it. Um, there's just a lot of aspects to this song that are not usual. And I love it. It's odd in so many great ways, but I have no idea what's going on. Like I said, it's a very exhausting track for me. So I'm in this weird love it and hate it. Love hate. What is that word? Yeah, love hate, like a love hate relation. Yeah. I love hate this song. It really pushes me to my limits sonically. It pushes me to my limits mentally. I have no idea what most of this is about or what's really going on. But it's also just very fascinating on many levels, and also ties into a vocal style that I do enjoy, even if this does crank it up to the next level, and gives me a new frame of reference for that. So yeah, this was a roller coaster ride of a song, and I guess that's where we're gonna end this. You guys hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this, anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to clarify that I said or correct. And I have a ton of questions about it. If you have any context or information regarding the song or the vocalist, please let me know. Above the comment section is a description box, and there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel on it. You can pick up some merch, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, join the Patreon, help support the channel, and have control over what we check out in the future. Above that, if you could, of course, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, we have a special selection coming up. After that, nothing, because we only do 2 videos per day. Well, tomorrow I'll be back, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to look at our final Wild Screamers track, and instead of a creator request, which is what we typically do, we're going to be looking at some LGBTQ artists. Last year we did this, but I had more open slots across the week since I only did 1 video per day, I think, is what we used to do. It was easier to do bonus videos. So this month, for Pride Month, we're going to do a Pride themed reaction every Friday. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, with the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.